The sun was a brutal, indifferent thing. Eliza had been walking for 2 days, maybe 3. Time had become slippery, unreliable. Her left boot had split open somewhere back near the rocks, and every step sent a spike of pain through her heel. She'd torn strips from her petticoat to wrap the wound, but the fabric was filthy now, stiff with dried blood and dirt. The canteen she'd grabbed from the wreckage had run dry yesterday, or the day before. She couldn't remember. What she could remember, what she couldn't stop remembering, was the sound. The whooping cries that had come out of nowhere, splitting the morning quiet like an axe through kindling. The screams that followed, Mrs. Hadley clutching her daughter, Mr. Porter trying to reload his rifle with shaking hands, the smell of gunpowder and burning canvas, and something else, something worse, that she didn't have words for. She'd been gathering firewood when it happened. 50 yards from camp, arms full of dead branches, when the world exploded into chaos. She'd dropped the wood and run, not toward the wagons, some instinct deeper than thought had taken over, away, into the scrub brush, into the maze of red rock and thorny vegetation that tore at her skirts and skin. She'd hidden in a crevice barely wide enough for her body, wedged between 2 slabs of stone, and listened to everything she knew burn to the ground. When silence finally came, she'd waited. Hours, maybe. Until her legs cramped and her bladder screamed and the shadows grew long. When she finally crawled out, the wagons were skeletal frames of blackened wood. The bodies were already drawing flies. She'd found the canteen, a small knife, a wool blanket that had somehow escaped the flames. And then she'd started walking, because staying meant dying, and some part of her, the part that had survived a fever at 7, her mother's death at 12, the crossing from Ohio, that part refused. Now, on the 3rd day, or maybe the 4th, that refusal was wearing thin. The landscape shimmered in the heat. Eliza's vision kept doubling, tripling. She'd see a tree that wasn't there, a stream that dissolved into dust when she got close. Her tongue felt like leather in her mouth. The sun was setting, she thought it was setting, the light was different, but she couldn't remember it rising. Her foot caught on something. She went down hard, hands scraping on rough ground. For a long moment she just lay there, cheek pressed against the earth, breathing in dust. "Get up!" The voice in her head sounded like her mother, practical, unsentimental. "Get up, Eliza. You're not done yet." "I think I might be," she whispered to the dirt. "Then you die here. Is that what you want, after everything?" She didn't know what she wanted anymore. She'd wanted to reach California, once. She'd wanted to see the ocean, start over, maybe open a dress shop like she'd planned with her mother before the fever took her. Those wants seemed absurd now, childish fantasies from another lifetime. But her mother's voice was right about one thing: she wasn't dead yet. Eliza pushed herself up. Her hands were shaking. Everything was shaking. She got one foot under her, then the other, and stood. The world tilted sideways. She waited for it to settle, but it didn't, not really. She started walking anyway. The sun was definitely setting now. The sky had gone orange and purple, colors too pretty for how she felt. She kept putting one foot in front of the other, not because she had a destination, but because stopping felt like surrender. That's when she saw it. At first she thought it was another hallucination, a dark shape in the distance, too regular to be natural. But it didn't disappear when she blinked. It stayed there, solid and real. A building. Eliza's heart lurched. She tried to move faster, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. She stumbled forward, fell again, crawled for a few feet before getting back up. The building was getting closer. Not a mirage. Real. It was a ranch house, low and weathered, with a barn beside it, and a corral that looked like it had seen better days. Smoke rose from the chimney. Smoke meant people. Smoke meant fire. Fire meant warmth, water, food. Fire meant life. She was maybe 100 yards away when her legs finally gave out completely. She went down in a heap, and this time she couldn't get back up. Her vision was going dark at the edges, tunneling down to a pinpoint. The last thing she saw before everything went black was the front door of the ranch house opening, and a figure stepping out into the dying light. Mati. When Eliza woke, the first thing she felt was water. Cool, clean water on her lips, her tongue, trickling down her throat. She choked, coughed, and someone pulled the cup away. Easy. A man's voice, low, rough, not too fast. She forced her eyes open. The light was dim, lamplight, not sunlight. She was lying on something soft. A bed. When had she last been in a bed? The man came into focus slowly. He was crouched beside her, holding a tin cup, watching her with an expression that wasn't quite concern and wasn't quite suspicion. Somewhere in between. He looked to be in his 30s, maybe, with dark hair that needed cutting and a face that seemed carved from the same hard wood as the ranch house. There was a scar through his left eyebrow, pale against tanned skin. Where? Her voice came out as a croak. She tried again. Where am I? My place. He held out the cup again. Drink, slow. This time she managed a few sips without choking. The water tasted like metal and earth and heaven. What happened? He asked. The question was simple, but the answer wasn't. Eliza's mind flashed back. The attack, the fire, the bodies, and she shoved it down hard. She couldn't go there. Not yet. Wagon train, she managed. Ambush. Everyone, I'm the only... She couldn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. The man's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Understanding, maybe. Or just recognition of a story he'd heard before. How long have I been here? She asked. 2 days. 2 days. She'd lost 2 days. The last thing she remembered was the door opening, the figure in the fading light. You carried me inside? Wasn't going to leave you in the yard. It wasn't exactly warm, the way he said it, but it wasn't cold either, just matter of fact. She studied him, trying to figure out what kind of man lived alone in a place like this. His clothes were worn but clean. His hands, when he'd held the cup, had calluses but no dirt under the nails. The room around them was sparse. A bed, a chair, a small table, but not filthy. Not the den of some wild hermit. I'm Eliza, she said. Eliza Warren. He nodded once. Cole Bennett. Thank you, Mr. Bennett, for... She gestured vaguely at the room, at herself, at being alive. For this. Cole's fine. He stood up, setting the cup on the table. You need to eat something. I'll bring soup. He was at the door before she found her voice again. Wait. He paused, looking back. The others from my train. Did you see them? The wagons? His face was unreadable. Saw the smoke. Went to check. Wasn't anything to be done by then. The words hit her like fists. Wasn't anything to be done. Final. Absolute. She'd known it already, had seen it with her own eyes, but hearing it confirmed made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Did you bury them? Something flickered across his face. Yeah, all of them. She wanted to ask more, where, how, if he'd said anything over their graves, but her throat closed up. She managed a nod instead, and he seemed to take that as dismissal because he left without another word. Eliza lay back against the pillow, a real pillow, stuffed with something that smelled like dried grass, and stared at the ceiling. The wood beams were rough-hewn, dark with age and smoke. She could hear Cole moving around in another room, the clink of a pot, the scrape of a spoon. She was alive. Against every odd, every expectation, she was alive. Now she had to figure out what to do about it. The soup was thin but hot, made with some kind of meat she didn't ask about, and vegetables that had seen better days. Eliza ate it anyway, slowly, while Cole sat in the chair by the door and watched her with those unreadable eyes. You got people? He asked when she'd finished most of the bowl. Someone who'll be looking for you? Eliza set down the spoon. No, my mother died 3 years ago. No other family. Friends? Back east? A few, maybe. No one close. She met his gaze. I was going to California to start over. That was the whole point. Cole nodded slowly, processing this. What were you planning to do there? Open a dress shop. I'm good with a needle. Was good with a needle. She looked down at her hands, at the bandages wrapped around her palms, where the skin had torn during her crawl through the desert. Seems like a silly plan now. Nothing silly about having a trade. No, I suppose not. She paused. What do you do here? Ranch cattle? Some cattle, mostly horses. Break them, train them, sell them when I can. He leaned back in the chair, arms crossed. It's a living. Lonely one, I'd imagine. His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. I manage. They sat in silence for a moment. Eliza could feel exhaustion creeping back in, pulling at her like a current. But there were things that needed saying first. "Mr. Bennett, Cole, I can't stay here indefinitely. I don't have money to pay you, but I can work. I'm not afraid of hard work. Whatever you need, cooking, cleaning, mending, I can earn my keep until I figure out what comes next." Cole studied her for a long moment. "You should rest first. You're still half dead." "I'm not half dead. I'm tired and banged up, but I'm not an invalid." She heard the edge in her voice and tried to soften it. "I appreciate what you've done, truly, but I won't be a burden. Didn't say you were." "Then let me help." He stood up, taking the empty bowl from her hands. "We'll talk about it when you can stand without falling over. For now, sleep." It wasn't a suggestion. Eliza wanted to argue, to press the point, but the truth was she could barely keep her eyes open. The bed was pulling at her, warm and soft and impossible to resist. "All right," she conceded. "But tomorrow we'll see." He left, closing the door behind him, and Eliza let herself sink back into the pillow. Through the thin walls, she could hear him moving around, the sound of water being poured, the creak of floorboards, normal sounds, living sounds. She closed her eyes and tried not to see the burning wagons. Over the next few days, Eliza learned the geography of her new reality. The ranch house was small, 2 rooms plus a lean-to kitchen. Cole had given her his bed and taken to sleeping in the barn, which bothered her more than she wanted to admit. The main room served as kitchen, dining area, and living space all at once, with a fireplace that looked like it had been built by someone who valued function over form. Everything was worn, but serviceable. The kind of place that had been lived in hard, but not neglected. Outside, the land stretched endlessly in all directions, all red dirt and scrub brush and sky. The barn was bigger than the house, with stalls for 8 horses and a loft full of hay. The corral needed mending. The water came from a well that required more muscle to operate than Eliza had expected. There was a chicken coop with 5 hens and a rooster that had a personal vendetta against anyone who wasn't Cole. It was in every measurable way the middle of nowhere. Cole ran the place alone, which seemed impossible until Eliza watched him work. He was up before dawn and didn't stop until well after dark. She'd see him breaking a new horse in the corral, all patience and quiet authority, and then an hour later he'd be fixing a section of fence like it was the most natural transition in the world. He moved through his days with the kind of efficiency that came from years of doing everything yourself because there was no one else. By the 4th day, Eliza was on her feet, shaky but upright. She'd insisted on helping with breakfast, and Cole had let her, though she'd caught him watching from the corner of his eye like he expected her to collapse into the eggs. She hadn't. Small victory. "I need to check the far pasture," Cole said over coffee that morning. "Fence is down somewhere. Horses got out. How long will you be gone?" "Most of the day, probably." Eliza saw her opening. "Then I'll clean the house while you're gone. Properly clean it." Cole looked at her over the rim of his cup. "House is fine. House is functional. There's a difference. Don't need you wearing yourself out on my account." "I'm not doing it on your account," Eliza said, more sharply than she intended. "I'm doing it because I need to be useful. Because sitting still makes me think, and thinking makes me remember, and I'd rather not remember right now. So I'm going to clean your house, and you're going to let me, and we'll both pretend this is a normal arrangement." Cole's expression didn't change, but she thought she saw something flash in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or respect. "All right," he said finally. "Suit yourself." He left an hour later, saddling up a gray mare with practiced ease. Eliza watched from the doorway as he rode out, his figure getting smaller against the vast landscape until he disappeared entirely. Then she rolled up her sleeves and got to work. The house was worse than she'd thought. Not filthy, Cole clearly made an effort, but there was a layer of grime that spoke to years of bachelor living. Dust in the corners, grease on the stove, cobwebs in the rafters, the kind of dirt that accumulates when you're too busy surviving to notice. Eliza started with the dishes, heating water and scrubbing until her hands were raw. Then she swept, attacked the cobwebs with a broom, wiped down every surface she could reach. The work was meditative, rhythmic. Her body protested. She was still healing, still weak, but she pushed through. This was something she knew how to do, something she could control. By midday, she was exhausted but satisfied. The main room actually looked clean now, smelled clean. She'd found an old rag rug rolled up in the corner and beaten the dust out of it, laid it in front of the fireplace. It wasn't much, but it made the space feel less Spartan. She made herself eat something, bread and cheese from Cole's meager stores, and then tackled the bedroom. This room was harder. It was sparse in a way that felt deliberate, like Cole had stripped it down to only what was absolutely necessary. A bed, a trunk, a single shelf with a few books and a shaving kit. No pictures, no mementos, nothing personal. It was the room of someone who didn't want to be reminded of anything. Eliza changed the sheets. The old ones were long overdue, and found a quilt in the trunk that looked handmade. Someone had put hours into it, neat stitches in a log cabin pattern. A mother, maybe. Or a wife. She shook out the quilt and folded it at the foot of the bed, running her fingers over the fabric. There was a story here, in this room, in this house. A story Cole wasn't telling. By the time she heard the sound of hoofbeats outside, the sun was low and the house was transformed. Not just clean, warm, lived in. She'd even found candles and lit them, filling the space with soft light. Cole walked in and stopped dead in the doorway. Eliza, sitting at the table mending one of his shirts, looked up. "Find the fence?" He didn't answer right away. His gaze moved slowly around the room, taking in the changes. The clean floor, the rug, the candles. His face was unreadable, but his hands tightened on the doorframe. "Yeah," he said finally. "Found it. Was it bad?" "Bad enough." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "You didn't have to do all this. I told you I needed to be useful. This is more than useful." He moved to the table, picking up the shirt she'd been working on. "You sewed the button back on." "It was hanging by a thread. Seemed likely to fall off." Cole set the shirt down carefully, like it was something valuable. When he looked at her, his expression was different. Still guarded, but not quite as closed. "Thank you," he said. 2 words. They shouldn't have meant as much as they did. "You're welcome." They fell into a rhythm after that. Cole would wake before dawn, start the coffee, and by the time Eliza emerged from the bedroom, she'd finally convinced him to take his own bed back, and she'd made a pallet in the main room. He'd have breakfast started. They'd eat in companionable silence, and then he'd head out to work the horses or mend fence or do whatever needed doing. Eliza would tackle the house, the cooking, the endless small repairs that a place like this demanded. In the evenings, they'd eat dinner together. Sometimes they talked. More often, they didn't. But it was a comfortable silence, the kind that didn't need filling. Eliza learned things about Cole in pieces, fragments he let slip without meaning to. He'd been here 7 years. Bought the place from a widow who couldn't manage it alone after her husband died. He'd come from somewhere back east, he never said where exactly, for reasons he didn't explain. He liked his coffee black, his eggs over easy, and didn't care much for conversation before he'd had at least 1 cup. He was good with horses in a way that bordered on uncanny. She'd watched him work with a young stallion that had nearly killed its previous owner, all wild-eyed rage and thrashing hooves. Cole just stood in the center of the corral, still and patient, waiting. It took hours, but eventually the horse approached, sniffing, curious. By the end of the week, Cole was riding him. "How do you do that?" Eliza asked one evening, leaning on the corral fence. Cole glanced over from where he was brushing down the stallion. "Do what?" "Make them trust you." He considered the question, running the brush along the horse's flank. "Don't make them do anything. Just give them time to figure out I'm not a threat. Everything else follows." "That's simple?" "Simple. Not easy." He patted the horse's neck. "Most people don't have the patience. They want to force it, break the spirit. But a broken horse isn't worth much. Needs to choose to trust you." Eliza thought about that. About choice. About trust. "What about people?" she asked. Cole looked at her then, really looked at her, and for a moment she thought he might actually answer. But then he turned back to the horse. "People are harder," he said. 3 weeks in, Eliza woke to the sound of rain. Real rain, not the brief scattered showers they'd had before. This was a downpour, hammering the roof, turning the yard into a sea of mud. She got up and found Cole already awake, standing at the window, watching the storm with a frown. "Problem?" she asked. "Depends. If it keeps up like this, the creek will flood. Need to move the horses to higher ground. I'll help. No need. You stay dry. Cole. She waited until he looked at her. I'm helping. He started to argue, seemed to think better of it, and nodded. Get your boots. They worked in driving rain, leading horses one by one from the lower pasture to the corral near the house. The ground was slick, treacherous. Eliza's clothes were soaked through in minutes, her hair plastered to her face, but she kept moving, kept working. On the last trip, her foot slipped in the mud. She went down hard, landing on her side. Before she could get up, Cole was there, pulling her to her feet. You all right? Fine. Just clumsy. But he didn't let go of her arm right away. They stood there in the rain, close enough that she could see the water running down his face, darkening his hair. Close enough to see something shift in his expression, something that made her breath catch. Then he stepped back, releasing her. Come on, he said. We're done here. They got back to the house and stood dripping in the doorway. Eliza was shivering, her teeth chattering. Cole grabbed blankets, thrust one at her. Change into dry clothes. I'll build up the fire. She did, grateful for the privacy of the bedroom. When she came back out, Cole had the fire roaring and coffee brewing. He'd changed too, and his hair was still damp, sticking up in odd directions. Here, he handed her a cup. You did good work out there. I told you I could pull my weight. Never doubted it. You did, though, at the beginning. He considered that. Maybe. You looked half dead when you got here. Figured you'd be gone as soon as you could travel. I still might be. The words hung between them. Eliza hadn't meant to say them out loud, but now that she had, she couldn't take them back. Because it was true. She couldn't stay here forever. Eventually, she'd have to figure out what came next. Cole's expression went carefully neutral. Where would you go? I don't know. Nearest town, I suppose. Find work, save money. Maybe still try for California if I can manage it. Town's 3 days' ride, not much there. General store, saloon, not much else. It's more than here. Yeah. He stared into his coffee. I suppose it is. The rain hammered against the roof. Eliza watched the fire, watched the flames dance and leap. Something was building in the room, some tension she couldn't quite name. Cole, she said quietly. What happened to you? Before here. His jaw tightened. Nothing worth talking about. That's not true. How would you know? Because I can see it. In this house. In the way you live. You're hiding from something. She paused. Same as me. For a long moment he didn't respond. Then he set down his cup and stood, walking to the window. Outside, the rain had turned to sheets of water, obliterating the landscape. I was married, he said finally. Sarah. We had a farm back in Missouri, good land. We were going to build something, raise kids, the whole dream. His voice was flat, factual. She got sick, fever, took her in 3 days. I buried her under the oak tree by the house and left the next week. Couldn't stay there. Couldn't look at that tree every morning. Eliza's chest tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was 7 years ago. I'm fine. Are you? He turned to look at her then, and his eyes were hard. What do you want me to say, Eliza? That I'm broken? That I came out here to die slow instead of fast? Maybe that was the plan at first, but I'm still here, still working. That's all there is. That's not all there is. It is for me. The words were final, absolute. A door slamming shut. Eliza wanted to push, to argue, but she recognized the look on his face. She'd seen it in her own mirror often enough. All right, she said softly. The storm raged all night. They sat by the fire, not talking, just existing in the same space. Eventually, Eliza dozed off, wrapped in her blanket, and when she woke in the early hours of dawn, someone had covered her with a quilt, the handmade one from the trunk. Sarah's quilt. She pulled it close and let herself cry for the first time since the attack, for the people she'd lost, for the life she'd planned that was gone, for the broken man sleeping in the barn because he couldn't let himself have anything good. Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle and then stopped entirely. By the time the sun rose, the sky was clear, washed clean. Everything looked different in the morning light, sharper, more real. Eliza folded the quilt carefully and put it back in the trunk. Then she went to make coffee, because that's what you did. You kept going. You kept moving forward, even when you didn't know where forward led. The morning after the storm, the land looked drowned. Water pooled in every low spot, turning the yard into a patchwork of mud and standing water. The chickens huddled miserably on their roost, refusing to come down. Even the horses seemed subdued, standing quiet in the corral with their heads low. Cole was already out when Eliza emerged from the house, checking the damage. She watched him from the doorway, saw the tension in his shoulders, the way he moved from fence post to fence post with systematic purpose. He was counting losses, she realized, measuring what the storm had taken. She poured 2 cups of coffee and carried them outside, her boots squelching in the mud. "Here," she said, holding one out. He took it without looking at her. "Thanks. How bad is it?" "Bad enough. Lost about 20 feet of fence on the north side. Creek took out the bridge to the lower pasture, and the roof's leaking over the barn." He took a long drink of coffee. "Could have been worse. Could have been better." "That's always true." He finally looked at her. "You sleep all right?" "Well enough." She didn't mention the crying, and he didn't ask about her red-rimmed eyes. "What needs doing first?" "I'll handle it." "Cole?" "What?" "Stop trying to protect me from work. I'm here. I'm capable. Use me." His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "You're stubborn, you know that?" "I've been told." He studied her for a moment, then nodded toward the barn. "Fine. Roof needs patching. I've got tar and canvas in the lean-to. Think you can manage a ladder?" "I managed a lot worse 3 weeks ago." "Fair point." They worked through the morning, Cole on one section of roof, Eliza on another. The work was hot, sticky, frustrating. The tar smelled awful and got everywhere. Eliza's arms ached from holding the canvas in place while Cole secured it, but slowly, methodically, they sealed the leaks. "You ever do this before?" Cole called across the roof. "Mend a roof? No. But I once helped repair a water wheel back in Ohio. Can't be that different." "How'd that turn out?" "Wheel worked fine. My hands looked like I'd fought a wildcat." Cole actually laughed at that. A short, rough sound, but genuine. It changed his whole face, made him look younger, less carved from stone. "What?" Eliza asked. "Nothing. Just trying to picture you fighting a wildcat." "I'd win." "Yeah," he said, still smiling. "I believe you would." By midday, they'd finished the roof and moved on to the fence. This was harder work, physical in a way that made Eliza's still-healing body protest. Digging post holes in mud-soaked earth, lifting rails, hammering. Her hands blistered within an hour, and she could feel new bruises forming on her shoulders where she'd hefted the rails into place. She didn't complain, didn't slow down. Kept pace with Cole, matching him stroke for stroke. "You're going to hurt yourself," he said around hour 3. "I'm fine." "Your hands are bleeding." She looked down. He was right. The blisters had broken, and blood mixed with mud on her palms. She wiped them on her skirt. "Still fine." "Eliza, I said I'm fine." The words came out harder than she meant them to. She took a breath, moderated her tone. "I need this. The work. The tired. I need to feel like I'm building something instead of just surviving. Can you understand that?" Cole's expression softened. "Yeah, I can." They worked until the sun started to set, until the fence was whole again and Eliza's arms felt like lead. When they finally walked back to the house, she could barely lift her feet. "Sit," Cole ordered, pointing at the chair by the fire. "I'll make dinner." "I can—" "Sit." She sat. Watched him move around the kitchen with the same efficiency he brought to everything else. He made a simple stew, nothing fancy, but the smell alone made her stomach growl. They ate in silence, too tired for conversation. Afterward, Cole took her hands and examined them in the lamplight. "These need cleaning," he said. "I can do it." "I know you can, but I'm faster." He got a basin of water and a clean cloth, settled in front of her. "This might sting." It did. Eliza gritted her teeth as he cleaned the wounds, his touch surprisingly gentle for hands as rough as his. "You don't have to prove anything, you know," he said quietly, not looking up from his work. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're already the toughest person I've ever met. You walked out of hell and kept walking. You don't need to work yourself into the ground to prove you deserve to be here." Eliza felt something catch in her throat. "Then why do I feel like I do?" "Because you're human. Because you lost everything, and you're trying to make sense of it. Because staying still feels like giving up." He finished with her left hand and started on the right. I know because I've been there. Still am there, most days. What do you do? When it gets too loud in your head? Work until I can't think. Sleep when I can. Wake up and do it again. He wrapped her hands in clean cloth, tying it off carefully. Not much of a solution, but it's what I've got. Sounds lonely. It is. He met her eyes then. But so is everything else. The honesty in his voice hit her square in the chest. She wanted to say something, offer something, but what could she offer? She was just as broken, just as lost. Thank you, she said instead. For the hands. For everything. You've thanked me enough. I don't think I have. They sat there in the firelight, her bandaged hands resting in her lap, his calloused ones folded on the table. Two people who'd been hollowed out by life, trying to figure out how to be whole again. Outside, a coyote called, lonely and distant. The next week passed in a blur of work and routine. The land dried out. The chickens resumed laying. Life settled back into its rhythm, but something had shifted between them. Cole talked more. Small things at first. He mentioned a town called Redemption. Terrible name, he said, but the general store was decent. He told her about a mountain cat he'd seen last winter, massive thing that had killed two of his horses before he'd managed to drive it off. He asked her about Ohio, about her mother, about what she'd wanted to be when she was young. Eliza found herself answering, found herself asking questions in return, found herself laughing more than she had in years. It felt dangerous, this easiness between them, like something that could be taken away. On the 8th day after the storm, a rider appeared on the horizon. Eliza saw him first, a dark speck moving against the pale morning sky. She called to Cole, who was in the barn. He came out squinting into the distance. His whole body went tense. You expecting anyone? Eliza asked. No. They watched the rider approach. He was older, maybe 60, with a gray beard and the kind of beaten-down look that came from too many years of hard living. He rode up to the fence and dismounted stiffly. Cole Bennett? He called. That's me. Name's Harlan Reed. I'm the postmaster over in Redemption. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out an envelope. Got a letter for a Miss Eliza Warren. Heard through the grapevine she might be here. Eliza's heart stopped. She walked forward slowly, taking the envelope from the man's weathered hands. How did you know I was here? She asked. Word travels. Cole here mentioned he'd taken in a survivor from that wagon train massacre when he came through town last week for supplies. Description matched the inquiry I got from back east. Reed tipped his hat. Sorry for your loss, miss. That was a bad business. Thank you, Eliza managed. Reed remounted his horse. I'll be on my way then. Colt, you need anything from town? I'll be back through in a month or so. Appreciate it, Harlan. They watched him ride away. Eliza stood holding the letter, not opening it, not wanting to know what was inside. Cole cleared his throat. I'll be in the barn if you need me. He left her alone with it. Eliza walked back to the house, sat at the table, and stared at the envelope. The handwriting was familiar. Her mother's friend, Mrs. Catherine Brennan, the only person back in Ohio who'd cared enough to keep in touch. She opened it. The letter was short, written in Catherine's careful script. She'd heard about the attack through the newspapers. Apparently it had made news back east. The whole train wiped out. No survivors reported. She'd feared the worst. She was overjoyed to hear Eliza was alive. She had a proposition. Catherine's sister ran a boarding house in Philadelphia. Good establishment, respectable. They needed help, and if Eliza could make her way east, there was a job waiting, room, board, and wages, a chance to start over in civilization, away from the savagery of the frontier. The letter ended with an invitation. Come home, Catherine wrote. You've suffered enough. Come home and be safe. Eliza read it 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and set it on the table. She sat there for a long time, watching dust motes drift in the morning light. Cole didn't come back to the house until evening. When he did, Eliza had dinner ready and the letter put away in her pocket. Everything all right? He asked. Fine. He didn't believe her. She could see it in his face. But he didn't push, just sat down and ate. They cleaned up together in silence, moving around each other with practiced ease. Cole, Eliza said finally, if I asked you something, would you answer honestly? He dried his hands on a towel, turned to face her. Depends on the question. Why did you let me stay? Really? You could have sent me to town that first week, had someone else deal with me, but you didn't. Why? Cole was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. Because you reminded me of something I'd forgotten. What's that? That people can be stronger than the things that break them. He met her eyes. You walked out of that desert half dead and still fighting. I've been alive 7 years and just going through motions. Figured maybe I could learn something from that. Eliza felt her throat tighten. You're stronger than you think. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just stubborn. There's a difference? I don't know anymore. She pulled the letter from her pocket, handed it to him. Read it. He did, his expression unchanging. When he finished, he gave it back. Philadelphia, he said. That's a long way. It is. Good opportunity, though. Safe, respectable. It is that, too. You going to take it? The question hung between them. Eliza looked at him, this hard, quiet man who'd saved her life and then given her a reason to want to keep living. This broken person who understood her brokenness in a way no one else could. I don't know, she said honestly. Part of me thinks I should. It's the sensible choice. But another part... What? Another part doesn't want to go back to what I was before. The safe, small life. The one where I was just surviving, not living. She paused. Does that sound crazy? No. Cole looked out the window at the darkening sky. Sounds like you're figuring out who you want to be instead of who people expect you to be. What if I don't know who that is yet? Then you take your time figuring it out. He turned back to her. You don't owe me anything, Eliza. You've more than earned your keep here. If you want to go to Philadelphia, I'll get you there safe. But if you want to stay... He trailed off. If I want to stay? Then stay. Work for wages if it makes you feel better about it. Or don't. Just stay. The words were simple, but the weight behind them wasn't. Eliza could see it in his face, the vulnerability he was trying to hide. He was asking her to stay. Not demanding, not expecting. Just asking. I need to think about it, she said. That's fair. That night, Eliza lay on her pallet and stared at the ceiling beams. Philadelphia meant safety, security, a known quantity. But it also meant going backward, returning to a life she'd already left behind once. Here, on this ranch in the middle of nowhere, she had nothing guaranteed. No safety, no security. Just hard work and empty land and a man who barely talked about anything that mattered. But she also had something she hadn't felt in years. The sense that she was building towards something instead of just enduring. The question was whether that was enough. She still didn't have an answer when sleep finally took her. The next morning brought visitors. 2 of them this time, riding up in a wagon. Cole saw them first and his face went dark. Problem? Eliza asked, coming to stand beside him. Neighbors, sort of. He didn't sound happy about it. The wagon stopped and 2 women climbed down. The first was maybe 40, handsome in a severe way, dressed in practical calico with her hair pulled back tight. The second was younger, prettier, with blonde curls and a dress that had no business being on a ranch. Mr. Bennett, the older woman called. Forgive the intrusion. I'm Margaret Hayes, and this is my daughter Lucy. We have the ranch about 10 miles south. Mrs. Hayes, Cole's voice was polite but cold. What can I do for you? We heard you had a guest, the young woman from the wagon train. Margaret's eyes found Eliza. We wanted to come check on her welfare, make sure everything was appropriate. The implication was clear. Eliza felt her spine stiffen. I'm fine, thank you, she said, stepping forward. Mr. Bennett has been nothing but a gentleman. Of course, of course. Margaret's smile didn't reach her eyes. But still, a young unmarried woman living alone with a bachelor. People talk. We thought perhaps she might be more comfortable staying with us. We have plenty of room, and Lucy would enjoy the company. Lucy, for her part, was staring at Cole with undisguised interest. That's very kind, Eliza said, her voice level. But I'm quite comfortable here. I earn my keep, and Mr. Bennett needs the help. Surely there must be family back east who... There isn't, Eliza cut her off. My mother is dead. I have no other relations. This is where I am, and this is where I'm staying. Margaret's expression tightened. I see. Well, the offer stands should you change your mind. She turned to Cole. Mr. Bennett, perhaps you'd walk with me to the barn. I wanted to ask about that stallion you broke last month. My husband is interested in purchasing. It wasn't a request. Cole glanced at Eliza and she gave him a small nod. He followed Margaret toward the barn, leaving Eliza alone with Lucy. The younger woman smiled, bright and empty. You must tell me everything. Is it terribly exciting living out here with just Mr. Bennett? He's so mysterious, don't you think? Hardly ever comes to town, keeps to himself. Mother says it's because he's mourning his dead wife, but I think he's just shy. I don't think shy is the right word, Eliza said carefully. Oh, you know what I mean. Strong, silent type. Lucy leaned in conspiratorially. Is he courting you? I only ask because if he's not, well, I've had my eye on him for ages. A man like that shouldn't be alone, don't you think? He needs a proper wife to manage the household, host dinners, help him build something respectable. Eliza felt something cold and sharp twist in her gut. It took her a moment to recognize it as jealousy, which was absurd. She had no claim on Cole, no right to feel possessive. Mr. Bennett seems perfectly capable of managing on his own, she said, but he shouldn't have to. Lucy's voice took on a calculating edge. A ranch this size could be really something with the right woman behind it. Mother says we should be thinking about merging our properties, our ranch and this one. It would make sense, don't you think? One big operation. I think that's between you and Mr. Bennett. Well, yes, but I wanted to make sure there wasn't anything between you two. I wouldn't want to step on anyone's toes. Eliza wanted to tell her there was everything between them, wanted to say that Cole was hers in all the ways that mattered. But that wasn't true, and claiming it would be a lie. There's nothing between us, she said, hating the words even as she spoke them. We're just two people sharing space. Oh, good. Lucy's smile widened. Then you won't mind if I call on him sometime? Bring him a pie, maybe? Mother makes the best apple pie in the territory. Do what you like. By the time Cole and Margaret returned from the barn, Eliza had a headache building behind her eyes. The Hayes women left with promises to return soon, Lucy throwing a last longing look at Cole as the wagon pulled away. Sorry about that, Cole said once they were gone. It's fine. It's not. Margaret Hayes has been trying to marry Lucy off to me for 2 years. Woman doesn't take no for an answer. She seems to think you'd make a good match. She thinks I'd make a good business partner. Her husband's ranch is struggling. Mine isn't. It's all numbers to her. He looked at Eliza. What did Lucy say to you? Nothing important. Eliza. She asked if you were courting me. I told her no. Cole's jaw tightened. What else? She's interested in you. Plans to come calling. Bring pie. Eliza kept her voice light, neutral. You should be flattered. I'm not. Why not? She's pretty, young, probably a good cook, from a good family. Everything a frontier wife should be. I don't want a frontier wife. What do you want? The question came out more intense than she'd meant it to. Cole stared at her, something shifting in his expression. I don't know, he said finally. But it's not that. They stood there, tension crackling between them like heat lightning. Eliza wanted to push, to demand a real answer, but the moment broke when one of the horses whinnied from the corral. I should check on them, Cole said, already turning away. Eliza watched him go, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. That night she wrote a response to Catherine's letter. She thanked her for the offer, said she'd think about it carefully, but made no promises either way. She sealed it and set it aside to post next time someone went to town. Then she sat at the table and made a list. Reasons to go to Philadelphia: safety, steady wages, respectable life, no risk of scandal, future prospects. Reasons to stay: hard work, uncertain future, potential for gossip, no guarantees. She stared at the list, then crumpled it up and threw it in the fire. Because the real reason to stay, the only one that mattered, wasn't something she could write down. It was the way Cole looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, the way he'd given her his wife's quilt, the way he'd asked her to stay with a vulnerability that had cost him something to show. It was the fact that for the first time since her mother died, she felt like she was home. But home wasn't safe. Home could be lost. And Eliza had lost enough. The question was whether she was brave enough to risk losing again. She didn't have an answer yet, but she was starting to think she might. 2 days after the Hayes women's visit, Lucy showed up alone with a pie. Eliza saw her coming from the kitchen window and felt her stomach drop. She watched Cole emerge from the barn, wiping his hands on his pants, his expression carefully blank, as Lucy dismounted and approached him with that brilliant smile. Eliza couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could see Lucy's body language. The way she tilted her head, touched Cole's arm, laughed at something he said. Or didn't say. Cole stood there like a man enduring a necessary discomfort, polite but distant. After what felt like an eternity, Lucy pressed the pie into his hands and rode away. Cole stood there holding it, staring after her like he'd just been handed a live snake. When he came inside, Eliza was scrubbing potatoes with more force than necessary. "She brought pie," he said, setting it on the table. "I saw. Apple. She said her mother made it." "How nice." Cole was quiet for a moment. "You want to tell me what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." "Eliza." She set down the potato and faced him. "What do you want me to say? That it bothers me when pretty young women show up here batting their eyes at you because I have no right to be bothered. You're not mine. This isn't my home. I'm just passing through, remember?" "Are you?" "What? Passing through? Is that what you're doing here?" The question hung between them. Eliza opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "I don't know what I'm doing here." "Then figure it out." His voice was rougher than usual. "Because I can't keep doing this." "Doing what?" "Pretending like it doesn't matter, like you're just another set of hands around here." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "Lucy Hayes can bring me 100 pies and it won't change anything, because the person I want here isn't her." Eliza's heart was hammering. "Cole, let me finish." He took a step closer. "I told myself I was done with this, with wanting things, with letting myself feel anything that could hurt when it got taken away. And then you showed up, half dead and fighting anyway, and you wrecked everything. You made me remember what it feels like to want someone to stay. Not for the work, not for convenience, just to stay." "I'm scared," Eliza said quietly. "Of what?" "Of this. Of wanting something and losing it again. Everyone I've ever cared about either dies or leaves. My mother, the people on that wagon train. I can't—" Her voice cracked. "I can't go through that again." "You think I'm not scared?" Cole's laugh was bitter. "I buried my wife and swore I'd never let anyone close enough to hurt me like that again. And here you are, making me break every promise I made to myself." "Then what do we do?" "I don't know. But running to Philadelphia because it's safe, that's not living. That's just a different kind of dying." Eliza felt tears burning behind her eyes. "What if I stay and it doesn't work? What if we try this and it falls apart?" "Then it falls apart. But at least we tried." He closed the distance between them, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "I'm tired of being safe, Eliza. I'm tired of protecting myself from ghosts. If you want to go, I'll understand. But if you stay, if you choose to stay, I need to know it's because you want to be here, not because you're too scared to leave." "I do want to be here," she whispered. "That's what terrifies me." Cole's thumb brushed her cheek, catching a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "Then stay. Be terrified here with me." She laughed, a watery sound. "That's a terrible offer." "It's the only one I've got." Eliza looked up at him, at this man who'd pulled her from death and shown her what it meant to live again, at the scar through his eyebrow, the lines around his eyes, the mouth that rarely smiled but softened when he looked at her. "Okay," she said. "Okay? I'll stay." "I'm staying." Something shifted in Cole's expression, a tension releasing that she hadn't realized he'd been carrying. He pulled her into his arms, and Eliza let herself sink into him, let herself feel safe for the first time in months. They stood there in the kitchen, holding each other, while Lucy Hayes's pie sat forgotten on the table. The next morning, Eliza woke with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt since before the attack. She'd made her choice. Now she had to live with it, build on it, make it mean something. She found Cole in the barn, mucking out stalls. "I want to learn to ride," she announced. He looked up, surprised. "What brought this on?" "If I'm staying, I need to be useful, really useful. Not just cooking and cleaning. I need to know how to work the ranch properly." Cole leaned on his pitchfork. "You sure? Horses aren't like embroidery." "I'm aware. That's why I'm asking you to teach me." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right. Go saddle the mare. The sorrel one in the second stall." "I don't know how to saddle a horse." "Then that's your first lesson. It took Eliza 20 minutes to figure out the saddle, and even then Cole had to redo half of it. The mare, her name was Copper, stood patient while Eliza fumbled with straps and buckles, occasionally turning her head to watch with what looked like amusement. "She's laughing at me," Eliza muttered. "Probably." Cole tightened the girth. "Horses know when you don't know what you're doing. The trick is not letting it bother you." Once Copper was saddled, Cole led her to the corral and helped Eliza mount. The ground looked very far away suddenly. "Relax," Cole said. "You're stiff as a board." "I'm trying not to fall off." "You won't fall off if you relax. Tensing up makes it worse." He adjusted her posture, his hands on her knee, her ankle, repositioning her in the saddle. "Heels down, back straight. Don't grip with your knees, use your whole leg." It felt unnatural, all of it. Eliza had never been on a horse in her life. Back in Ohio, they'd had a cart and a mule, but that was different. This was a living creature beneath her, warm and breathing and capable of throwing her into the dirt. "Now what?" she asked. "Now you ask her to walk." "How do I ask?" "Squeeze gently with your legs, not too hard." Eliza squeezed. Nothing happened. "A little more." She squeezed harder. Copper started walking and Eliza nearly lost her balance. "Whoa, easy," Cole said, walking beside them. "Don't lean forward, sit back, feel her rhythm and move with it." It took 3 circuits around the corral before Eliza found something resembling a rhythm. Her back hurt, her legs hurt, everything hurt, but she was riding. "Good," Cole said. "Now stop her." "How?" "Pull back gently on the reins and say, 'Whoa.'" Eliza did. Copper stopped, thank God. "Not bad for a first try," Cole said, and Eliza heard actual approval in his voice. "Can I get down now?" "Not yet. Do it again." By the time Cole finally let her dismount, Eliza's legs were shaking and her backside was numb. She slid off Copper, less gracefully than she would have liked, and nearly buckled when her feet hit the ground. Cole caught her elbow. "Steady. I think I'm going to feel this tomorrow." "Oh, you'll definitely feel it tomorrow." He handed her Copper's reins. "Now unsaddle her and brush her down." "You're serious?" "Dead serious. You ride her, you take care of her. That's how it works." Eliza wanted to argue, but she could see this was part of the lesson. So she led Copper to the barn and fumbled through unsaddling her, then found the brush and started working. Cole watched from the doorway. "You're doing it wrong." "Of course I am." Long strokes. Follow the direction of the hair. Put some muscle into it. Eliza adjusted her technique. Copper made a contented sound, leaning into the brush. "See? She likes it," Cole said. "Horses are simple. You take care of them, they take care of you. Everything else is just details." "Is that how you see the world? Simple?" "I see the world as complicated as hell, but horses make sense to me in a way people never have." Eliza finished brushing Copper and put away the tack. Her whole body ached, but it was a good ache, the kind that came from learning something new, pushing past limits. "Same time tomorrow?" Cole asked. "Same time tomorrow." Over the next 2 weeks, Eliza rode every morning. Cole was a patient teacher when it came to horses, though not always with people. He'd correct her posture without warning, reach over to adjust her hands on the reins, position her body with the same clinical efficiency he brought to breaking new mounts. But slowly, incrementally, Eliza improved. She learned to trot without bouncing out of the saddle, learned to turn, to back up, to read Copper's moods and respond accordingly. Her body adapted, muscles she didn't know she had developing and strengthening. "You're a natural," Cole said one morning after she'd successfully gotten Copper to canter. "I'm really not." "You are. You don't fight her. A lot of people fight the horse, try to force it. You listen." Eliza patted Copper's neck. "She's a good teacher." "She is." Cole was quiet for a moment. "You should take her out. Real riding, not just the corral." "By myself?" "Why not? You're ready." "What if I get lost?" "Follow the creek west. Turn around when you feel like it. Follow it back east. Can't get lost." He paused. "Unless you want me to come with you." "No," Eliza said quickly. "No, I want to try it alone." She set out the next morning, early enough that the air was still cool. Copper seemed pleased to be out of the corral, her ears forward, her gait eager. They followed the creek like Cole had said, winding through scrub brush and red rock. The land was beautiful in a harsh way. Nothing like Ohio with its green hills and dense forests. This was open, exposed, unforgiving. But there was something honest about it. What you saw was what you got. No pretense, no hidden rot beneath pretty surfaces. Eliza thought about Philadelphia, about cobblestone streets and gas lamps and boarding houses with proper addresses, about safety and respectability and the life she could have had. And she thought about the ranch, about hard work and uncertain futures, and a man who'd forgotten how to want anything until she'd shown up. She knew which one she preferred. They were maybe 2 miles from the house when Eliza saw the smoke. At first she thought it was a campfire, but it was too much smoke, too dark. She turned copper toward it, her heart starting to pound. As they got closer, the smell hit her, burning wood, burning flesh. Eliza's stomach turned over. She knew that smell, had lived through it once already. She crested a low rise and saw it, a burned-out homestead. The cabin was still smoldering, the roof collapsed. A wagon sat overturned nearby. And bodies. 3 of them. Eliza dismounted on shaking legs, forced herself to look, to take it in. A family. Man, woman, child. Dead, burned, thrown aside like they didn't matter. She made herself walk closer, made herself look at their faces. Needed to see if they'd suffered, if it had been quick. Some instinct told her these details mattered, though she didn't know why. That's when she heard it. A sound. Soft, barely there, crying. Eliza spun around, trying to pinpoint the source. It came again, from the overturned wagon. She ran to it, looked underneath. A child. A girl, maybe 4 years old, covered in soot and blood, but breathing. Alive. Hey, Eliza said softly, kneeling down. Hey, it's okay. I'm here to help. The girl stared at her with wide, terrified eyes. She was clutching something, a rag doll, singed and dirty. Can you come out? Eliza asked. Can you come to me? The girl shook her head, pressed herself further back. Eliza didn't blame her. She remembered hiding, remembered the terror of not knowing who was safe. My name is Eliza, she said, keeping her voice gentle. I'm going to get you out of here, okay? I'm going to take you somewhere safe. The girl didn't respond, just kept crying those soft, broken sounds. Eliza lay down on the ground, reached under the wagon. I need you to take my hand. Can you do that? For a long moment, nothing. Then small fingers touched hers, trembling. Eliza pulled gently, and the girl let herself be drawn out. She was maybe 3 feet tall, skinny, covered in bruises and burns, but alive. What's your name, Mun? Eliza asked. The girl didn't answer. That's okay. You don't have to talk. Eliza looked around, assessing the situation. The attack was recent, maybe a few hours old. Whoever did this could still be nearby. They needed to leave. Now. I'm going to pick you up, she said. Is that okay? The girl nodded, barely. Eliza lifted her. She weighed almost nothing, and carried her to Copper. The mare eyed them nervously, but held steady as Eliza climbed into the saddle one-handed. The girl clutched against her chest. Then she turned Copper toward home and kicked her into a gallop. Cole was in the yard when they arrived. He took one look at Eliza's face, at the child in her arms, and his expression went hard. What happened? Homestead, 2 miles west, burned, family's dead. Eliza dismounted carefully. She's the only one left. Cole took the girl from her arms, and Eliza saw his face change, saw something old and painful flash across it. Get water, he said quietly, and find something for her to wear. Those clothes need to come off. Eliza hurried inside while Cole carried the girl to the barn. By the time she got there with water and one of Cole's old shirts that could serve as a nightgown, he had already started cleaning the girl's wounds. They worked in silence, checking for serious injuries. The girl had burns on her arms and a gash on her leg that would need stitches, but nothing immediately life-threatening. She didn't speak, didn't cry, just stared at nothing with those huge, empty eyes. She's in shock, Cole said quietly. I know. Did you see what happened? Who did it? No, but it was recent. Same as my train, same kind of attack. Cole's jaw tightened. This is the 3rd one in 2 months. 3rd? Hayes mentioned it when Margaret was here. Another homestead got hit last month. Thought it was an isolated thing, but if there's been 3... He trailed off. What are we going to do with her? Same thing I did with you. Keep her alive, figure out the rest later. They brought the girl into the house, settled her in Eliza's pallet by the fire. She curled up immediately, clutching her doll, and fell into an exhausted sleep. Eliza and Cole sat at the table, both too wired to rest. I should ride to Redemption, Cole said. Tell the marshal what happened. Get a search party together. Not tonight. It's too dark, too dangerous. Eliza, I said not tonight. Her voice was firm. That family is already dead. One more night won't change anything, but if whoever did this is still out there, I'm not letting you ride alone in the dark. Cole looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't, just nodded. They sat in silence, watching the girl sleep. She twitched and whimpered in her dreams, living through it all again. She'll remember, Eliza said quietly. Everything, for the rest of her life. I know. Is that how it was for you, after Sarah? Cole was quiet for a long moment. Yeah, every detail, burned in. The fever, the way she looked at me at the end, the sound of the dirt hitting her coffin. Can't forget even when I want to. How do you live with it? You just do. One day at a time. Eventually the edges dull a little. Not much, but enough. Eliza reached across the table, took his hand. He squeezed back hard. Thank you, she said. For what? For not being alone when I found her. For knowing what to do. For being someone I could bring her to. You would have managed without me. Maybe, but I'm glad I didn't have to. The girl woke screaming around midnight. Eliza was there in seconds, gathering her up, rocking her. Shh, you're safe, you're safe. The screaming turned to sobs, deep and wrenching. Eliza held her through it, murmuring things that probably didn't make sense but seemed to help anyway. Cole appeared in the doorway, fully dressed despite the hour. Nightmares? He asked. Yeah. He came and sat beside them. What's your name, little one? The girl hiccuped, buried her face in Eliza's shoulder. That's okay, Cole said. You don't have to tell us, but we need to call you something. You have a favorite name? No response. How about Rose? Eliza suggested. You remind me of a wild rose, small but tough. The girl lifted her head slightly, considering this. Rose it is then, Cole said. At least until you tell us different. Over the next few days, Rose barely spoke. She followed Eliza everywhere, a small shadow that flinched at sudden movements and cried in her sleep. Eliza let her help with simple tasks, gathering eggs, kneading bread, folding clothes. Anything to keep her hands busy, her mind occupied. Cole rode to Redemption and returned 2 days later with grim news. The marshal had formed a search party, but they'd found no trail. Whoever was responsible had disappeared into the territory like smoke. They're organizing patrols, Cole said, asking ranchers to watch their properties, report anything suspicious. Will it help? Probably not. The territory's too big, too empty. Easy to hide if you know what you're doing. That night, Eliza woke to find Rose standing at the window, staring out at the darkness. Can't sleep? Eliza asked softly. Rose shook her head. Me neither sometimes. Eliza came to stand beside her. You know what I do when I can't sleep? Rose looked up at her. I count good things. Things that are still here, still real. Want to try it with me? A small nod. Okay. 1. We're safe in this house. 2. We have food and water. 3. The chickens laid eggs today. 4. Copper likes apples. 5. Cole fixed the fence so the horses can't get out. She paused. Your turn. Rose was quiet for a long moment. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Dolly. It was the first word she'd spoken. That's right, Eliza said, her throat tight. Dolly is still here. That's 6. What's 7? You, Rose whispered. Eliza knelt down, pulled the girl into her arms. Yeah, baby, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. They stood there in the dark, counting good things, until Rose's breathing evened out and she fell asleep against Eliza's shoulder. When Eliza carried her back to bed, Cole was awake, sitting at the table with a cup of coffee. She spoke, Eliza said quietly. I heard. She's going to be okay. Eventually. Because of you. Because she's strong. Same as any of us who survive. Cole looked at her in the lamplight. You're good with her. Natural. I'm just doing what needs doing. It's more than that. He paused. Have you thought about what happens next? With her? You mean when someone comes looking for her? Family, maybe? Maybe. Or the marshal might want to place her somewhere. Orphanage, if there is one. Or with a family willing to take her. Eliza felt something fierce rise in her chest. She stays here. Eliza, I mean it. She stays here with us until we know she's safe, until she wants to leave. She met his eyes. Unless you don't want her here. It's not about what I want. It's about what's right for her. What's right for her is stability, people who won't abandon her, a place where she can heal. Eliza's voice was firm. We can give her that. Cole studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, she stays. Just like that? Just like that. He stood, moved to the window. You asked me once what I wanted. I told you I didn't know. But I'm starting to figure it out. What do you want, Cole? He turned to look at her. This, you, me, Rose, whatever we're building here, it's not perfect, and it sure as hell isn't safe, but it's real, and I haven't had anything real in 7 years. Eliza crossed to him, took his hand. I'm scared I'll mess this up. Me too. What if I'm not good enough? For her, for you, for any of this? Then you won't be, and we'll figure it out anyway. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. You don't have to be perfect, Eliza. You just have to be here. She kissed him then, soft and tentative. Cole froze for half a second, then kissed her back, his hand coming up to cup her face. It was gentle, careful, like they were both afraid of breaking something fragile. When they pulled apart, Eliza rested her forehead against his. I'm staying, she whispered. For real this time. Not because I'm scared to leave, because this is where I want to be. Good, Cole said, because I'm done pretending I don't need you here. They stood there in the quiet house, holding each other, while Rose slept peacefully for the first time since they'd found her. Outside, the land stretched dark and dangerous. But inside, something new was taking root. Something worth protecting. Something worth fighting for. The next morning brought Lucy Hayes again, this time with her mother. They rode up in the same wagon, both dressed like they were paying a social call to civilization instead of a ranch in the middle of nowhere. Eliza saw them coming and felt her jaw tighten. She was kneading bread, her hands covered in flour, and Rose was sitting at the table trying to shell peas. Stay inside, Eliza told Rose. I'll handle this. She walked out to meet them, Cole emerging from the barn at the same time. Margaret Hayes climbed down from the wagon with practiced grace. Mr. Bennett, Miss Warren, we heard about the attack, terrible business. We wanted to check that you were both well. We're fine, Cole said, his voice flat. And the child? Margaret's eyes were sharp. We heard you'd taken in a survivor. She's safe, Eliza said. Of course. But surely you realize this isn't a suitable environment for a child. A young girl needs a proper home, a woman's guidance. She has that here, Eliza interrupted. With all due respect, Miss Warren, you're hardly in a position to provide stability. You're not married, you have no legal claim to this property, and your living arrangements are, Margaret paused delicately, unconventional at best. The implication was clear. Eliza felt rage building in her chest, hot and sharp. My living arrangements are none of your concern. They are when they involve a child's welfare. The marshal should be notified. Proper placement should be arranged. Margaret's smile was thin. Unless, of course, there were some change in circumstances. A marriage, perhaps. That would certainly make things more proper. Lucy was watching Cole with naked interest. Eliza wanted to hit her. Mrs. Hayes, Cole said, his voice dangerously quiet. I appreciate your concern, but the girl stays here, with us. And my relationship with Miss Warren is also none of your concern. I'm only thinking of the child. No, you're thinking about how you can use this situation to your advantage, same as you always do. Cole took a step forward. Now, unless you have actual business here, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave. Margaret's face went red. Mr. Bennett, I don't think you understand the position you're in. If word gets out that you're keeping a child in an unmarried household, then let it get out, Eliza said. Let people talk. We know what we're doing, and we don't need your approval or anyone else's. Lucy spoke up for the first time. Mother, perhaps we should— Be quiet, Lucy. Margaret's eyes were fixed on Eliza. You're making a mistake, Miss Warren. Both of you are. This will end badly. Probably, Cole said, but it'll be our mistake to make. The Hayes women left in a cloud of dust and indignation. Eliza watched them go, her hands shaking with adrenaline. That was a threat, she said. I know. She's going to make trouble for us. Let her try. Eliza turned to look at him. You know what she was suggesting, that we should get married, make it legitimate. I know. And? Cole was quiet for a long moment. I'm not going to marry you because Margaret Hayes thinks it's proper, or because it would make things easier. If we do this, it's because we want to, not because someone's forcing our hand. But you'd consider it? Us? He met her eyes. I've been considering it since the day you told Lucy there was nothing between us, and I wanted to call you a liar. Eliza felt her breath catch. Cole? I'm not asking yet. We've got time. But yeah, Eliza, I'd consider it, more than consider it. Before she could respond, Rose appeared in the doorway holding her doll. Are the mean ladies gone? She asked. Eliza couldn't help it. She laughed. Yeah, baby, the mean ladies are gone. Rose came down the steps and took Eliza's hand. Good. I don't like them. Me neither, Cole said seriously. Me neither. That afternoon, while Rose napped, Eliza finally sent her letter to Catherine. Not the one she'd written before. A new one. She thanked her for the offer, told her she'd found a place, a purpose, something worth staying for. She was safe. She was building a life, and she hoped Catherine would understand. She sealed the envelope and set it on the table. Cole saw it there when he came in for supper. Philadelphia? He asked. Saying no to Philadelphia, something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe, or hope. You sure? I'm sure. That night they ate dinner as a family. Not husband and wife, not yet, but something close to it. Something real. Rose told them about a butterfly she'd seen, speaking slowly but steadily. Eliza praised her pea-shelling efforts. Cole carved a small horse from wood and gave it to Rose, who clutched it like treasure. After Rose went to bed, Eliza and Cole sat by the fire. This is dangerous, you know, Eliza said. What we're building. The Hayes women will talk. People will judge. Let them. It could hurt Rose. People might treat her different because of us. Or they might see a child who survived hell and had the luck to land somewhere good. Cole took her hand. We can't control what people think. We can only control what we do. And what I want to do is build something here, with you, with her, whatever that looks like. Even if it's hard, especially if it's hard. He squeezed her hand. I'm done with easy, Eliza. Easy is lonely. Easy is empty. I want hard and messy and real. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. Eliza leaned against him, let herself imagine it, a real future, not just surviving, but living, building something that mattered. Okay, she said. Let's do it. Let's build something. And in the quiet of the ranch house, with a sleeping child nearby and the frontier stretching dark and dangerous beyond the windows, they made their choice. Not the safe choice, not the easy one, but theirs. The gossip reached them 3 weeks later, carried by Harlan Reed on his monthly mail run. He didn't say anything directly, just handed Cole a few letters and mentioned in passing that folks in Redemption were talking about the arrangement, about propriety, about what it meant that an unmarried woman was living with a bachelor and raising a child that belonged to neither of them. Cole thanked him for the mail and watched him ride away without another word. That night, after Rose was asleep, he told Eliza what Reed had said. So it started, she said, not looking up from the shirt she was mending. Seems like it. Does it bother you, what they're saying? Cole considered this. Not the way you'd think. I don't care what strangers think of me. Never have. But I care that it might hurt you. Or Rose. Rose is 4 years old. She doesn't know what gossip is. She will eventually. Kids are cruel. They hear their parents talking, repeat things without understanding. He paused. And you. You have to live in this world too. Might want to go to town someday, buy supplies, talk to other women. This kind of talk makes that harder. Eliza set down her mending. You know what's funny? back in Ohio, I cared desperately about what people thought. My mother raised me to be respectable, to mind my reputation, to never give people cause to talk. And look where that got me. She met his eyes. I'd rather be talked about for living honestly than praised for living a lie. This isn't a lie?
What we have here? No. This is the most honest thing I've ever done. She picked up the shirt again, needle flashing in the lamplight. Let them talk. We know who we are. But Margaret Hayes wasn't content with talk. She showed up a week later with the marshal in tow. Eliza saw them coming, and her stomach dropped. She was in the garden with Rose, teaching her how to pull weeds without disturbing the vegetables. Rose had dirt on her face and was giggling at a beetle crawling across her hand. "Rose, honey, go inside," Eliza said quietly. "But we're not done. Now, please." Something in Eliza's tone made Rose obey. She ran into the house, still clutching the beetle. Cole emerged from the barn as the wagon pulled up. The marshal was a stocky man named Garrett, maybe 50, with hard eyes and a harder reputation. He'd been in the territory longer than most, had seen things that would break lesser men. "Mr. Bennett," he said, dismounting, "Mrs. Hayes here has raised some concerns about the child you're keeping." "The child has a name," Cole said. "Rose. And we're not keeping her, we're caring for her." Be that as it may, there are questions about the propriety of the arrangement. Garrett's voice was neutral, but Eliza could see he didn't like being here. "Given that you and Miss Warren aren't married, and the girl has no legal guardianship in place," Margaret spoke up, her voice dripping false concern. "We simply want what's best for the child. Surely you understand, Marshal. A young girl needs a proper home, a married couple. The Mitchells in town have expressed interest in taking her in. Respectable family, solid standing in the community." "Rose isn't going anywhere," Eliza said, stepping forward. "That's not for you to decide, Miss Warren." Margaret's smile was cold. "You have no legal claim to her, no blood relation, no marriage certificate that would give you any standing as a guardian." Garrett looked uncomfortable. "Mrs. Hayes, I'm not here to take anyone's child. I came to assess the situation, make sure the girl is safe and well cared for." "Then assess it," Cole said flatly. "Rose is fed, clothed, has a roof over her head. She's learning to read. She sleeps through the night now, doesn't wake up screaming. 2 months ago, she watched her family burn alive. You want to rip her out of the only place she feels safe and hand her to strangers because it makes the town gossips happy?" "Mr. Bennett, no one is saying—" "That's exactly what you're saying." Cole's voice was hard. "You want to know if she's safe? Ask her yourself. She's inside. Go talk to her, see if she looks neglected or afraid." Garrett hesitated, then nodded. "All right, I'd like to speak with the girl." They went inside. Rose was sitting at the table with her doll and the wooden horse Cole had carved, making them talk to each other in whispered voices. She looked up when they entered, and her face went pale when she saw the strangers. She ran to Eliza immediately, wrapping herself around her leg. "It's okay, sweetheart," Eliza said, stroking her hair. "This is Marshal Garrett. He just wants to talk to you for a minute." "I don't want to," Rose whispered. Garrett crouched down to her level, his expression softening. "Hello, Rose. I'm not here to scare you. I just need to ask a few questions. Is that all right?" Rose pressed her face against Eliza's skirt. "Do you like living here?" Garrett asked gently. A small nod. "Do Mr. Bennett and Miss Warren treat you well?" Another nod. "Has anyone here ever hurt you?" Rose's head shot up. "No, Eliza and Cole are good. They take care of me." "I'm sure they do." Garrett stood up, looking at Eliza and Cole. "The girl seems healthy, happy. I don't see cause for concern." Margaret's face went red. "Marshal, you can't be serious. This arrangement is—"
"Unconventional, yes. Illegal, no." Garrett's voice was firm. "Unless you can show me evidence of neglect or abuse, I have no grounds to remove the child from their care. And frankly, Mrs. Hayes, I think your concern has more to do with gossip than welfare." "How dare you?" "I dare because I've been doing this job for 20 years, and I know the difference between protecting a child and satisfying busybodies." He turned to Cole. "That said, Mr. Bennett, she's right about one thing. Without a legal guardianship arrangement, you're vulnerable. Anyone could challenge your right to keep her. My advice? Get it formalized, soon." "How do we do that?" Eliza asked. "Eliza Boulte. Need a judge to sign off on it. Nearest circuit judge comes through redemption every 3 months. He's due in about 6 weeks. Garrett headed for the door. I'll put in a word, let him know the situation, but you'll need to make your case. Might help if you two were married. Makes the whole thing cleaner, legally speaking. After they left, Cole and Eliza stood in the kitchen, Rose between them. They want to take me away, Rose said, her voice small. No one is taking you anywhere, Eliza said fiercely. You hear me? No one. But that lady said, that lady doesn't get to decide. Cole knelt down, put his hands on Rose's shoulders. You're part of this family now. We don't give up on family. Promise? Promise. Rose seemed to accept this. She went back to playing with her toys, but Eliza noticed she stayed closer than usual, always keeping them in sight. That night, after Rose was asleep, Cole and Eliza sat at the table with the reality of their situation hanging between them. We need to get married, Cole said bluntly. Is that a proposal? It's a statement of fact. Garrett was right. Without it, we're vulnerable. Someone like Margaret can keep making trouble, and eventually she'll find a judge who agrees with her. So we get married to protect Rose. Partly. He looked at her. But not just that. I told you before, I'm done pretending. If we're going to do this, I want it to be real. Eliza's heart was pounding. You want to marry me? Yeah, I do. He reached across the table, took her hand. Not because it's convenient, not because it solves a problem. Because when I think about my life going forward, you're in it. And I don't want you there as a housekeeper or a business partner. I want you there as my wife. I don't have a dress, Eliza said, and then laughed at how absurd that sounded given everything else. Cole smiled. I don't care if you wear a flour sack. Will you marry me? Yes. The word came out without hesitation. Yes, I'll marry you. He stood up, pulled her to her feet, and kissed her. It was different from the first kiss, deeper, more certain, a promise being made and sealed. When they pulled apart, Eliza was breathless. When? She asked. Soon as possible. I'll ride to Redemption tomorrow, talk to whoever can perform the ceremony. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. Cole. She touched his face. Are you sure? I know this started as survival, as convenience, but marriage is everything I want, he finished. Stop trying to talk me out of it. I'm not. I'm just making sure you know what you're getting. I'm stubborn. I have nightmares. I don't know the first thing about being a proper frontier wife. Good. I don't want a proper frontier wife. I want you. Stubborn, nightmares, and all. Eliza kissed him again, softer this time. Then you've got me. Cole left for Redemption at dawn. He was gone 2 days, and Eliza spent the time in a strange state of nervous energy. She cleaned things that were already clean, cooked more food than they could eat, tried on every dress she owned, and hated all of them. Rose watched her with curious eyes. Why are you being weird? She asked. I'm getting married. To Cole? Yes. Why? It was a good question. Eliza sat down at the table, pulled Rose onto her lap. Because I love him. And because I want us to be a real family, official, and everything. We're already a family, Rose said matter-of-factly. You're right, but this makes it so no one can say we're not. Rose considered this. Okay, can I wear my good dress? Absolutely. When Cole returned, he had news. The minister in Redemption would perform the ceremony, but they'd need a witness. He'd also filed paperwork with the circuit court for guardianship of Rose, with the wedding certificate as supporting documentation. It's happening, he said. 2 days from now. 2 days? Eliza felt panic rise. That's not enough time to what? Sew a fancy dress? Plan a party? Cole shook his head. Eliza, this isn't about spectacle. It's about making something official that's already true. We'll ride to town, say our vows, sign the papers, and come home. Simple. He was right. But still, some part of her that remembered her mother's teachings wanted more, wanted flowers and music and a church full of well-wishers. That part would be disappointed. The morning of the wedding, Eliza woke before dawn. She heated water and washed her hair, then braided it carefully and pinned it up. She wore her best dress, a simple blue calico that her mother had made 3 years ago. It was plain, practical, nothing like what a bride should wear. But when Cole saw her, his expression made her feel beautiful anyway. You look perfect, he said. I look like I'm going to church. Same difference. He was wearing a clean shirt, had trimmed his beard. Still looked like a rancher, but a tidier version. "Rose ready?" Rose came out wearing her good dress, her hair in 2 pigtails that Eliza had managed after 3 attempts. She clutched her doll and looked nervous. "Do I have to talk?" she asked. "No, baby, you just have to stand there and look pretty." "I can do that." They rode to Redemption together, Cole on his gray mare, Eliza on Copper, with Rose sitting in front of her. It took most of the day, and by the time they arrived, the sun was starting to set. The town was exactly as Cole had described it. Small, dusty, functional, a general store, a saloon, a handful of houses. The church was at the far end of the main street, white paint peeling, cross slightly crooked on the roof. The minister was a thin man named Reverend Talbot, older than Eliza expected, with kind eyes. He met them at the church door. "Mr. Bennett, Miss Warren. And this must be Rose." He smiled at the girl. Come in, come in. We've been expecting you." Inside, the church was simple. Wooden pews, a plain altar, evening light filtering through dusty windows. Harlan Reed was there, standing awkwardly in the front pew. Cole had asked him to serve as witness. "Shall we begin?" Talbot asked. They stood before the altar, Cole's hand warm in Eliza's. Rose stood beside them, holding tight to Eliza's skirt. Talbot opened his Bible and began the ceremony. The words washed over Eliza, traditional, formal, speaking of love and honor and commitment. She barely heard them. All she could focus on was Cole's face, the way he was looking at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking for 7 years. "Do you, Cole Bennett, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "And do you, Eliza Warren, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Eliza's voice was steady. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Cole kissed her, gentle and brief, conscious of their audience. But Eliza felt it down to her bones anyway. This was real. They were married. Harlan clapped, a single person's applause echoing in the empty church. Rose tugged on Eliza's dress. "Are you married now?" "Yes, sweetheart. We're married now." "So we're a real family?" "We were always a real family," Cole said, picking her up. "But yeah, it's official now." They signed the papers, Harlan and Talbot as witnesses. Talbot gave them a copy of the marriage certificate, folded neatly and sealed with wax. "Congratulations," he said warmly. "I wish you both every happiness." "Thank you," Eliza managed, still feeling slightly stunned that it was done. They stayed at the boarding house that night. Cole said it was tradition, that a wedding night should be special. He paid for 2 rooms, one for them and one for Rose, though Rose insisted on sleeping in Eliza's room anyway. Once Rose was asleep, Cole and Eliza sat on the narrow bed in their room, still wearing their wedding clothes. "We did it," Eliza said. "We did. I'm your wife now." "And I'm your husband." Cole took her hand, ran his thumb over her knuckles. "How does it feel?" "Terrifying. And right. Both at once." She leaned against him. "I never thought I'd get married. After my mother died, I figured that part of life had passed me by. And then I met you, and suddenly it was all I wanted." "Same here. After Sarah, I told myself I was done. Never again. Too much risk, too much pain." He kissed her temple. "And then you showed up half dead in my yard and ruined everything." "Sorry about that." "Don't be." He turned her face toward him. "You gave me a reason to want to wake up in the morning. That's not nothing." They kissed, slow and deep, and Eliza felt something shift inside her. This was her husband, this hard, broken man who'd chosen to heal alongside her, who'd taken in a traumatized child and loved her like his own, who'd built a life in the wilderness and was willing to share it. She was the luckiest woman alive. Later, lying in the dark with Cole's arm around her and Rose's soft breathing from the other bed, Eliza thought about the future, about the ranch, about raising Rose, about building something that would last. It wouldn't be easy. The land was harsh, the work was brutal, and people like Margaret Hayes would always find reasons to judge. But they'd face it together. That made all the difference. The next morning, they rode back to the ranch as a family. Mr. and Mrs. Bennett and their daughter, Rose. On paper and in truth. When they arrived, Cole lifted Rose down from the horse and set her on the ground. "Welcome home," he said. Rose looked up at the ranch house, weathered, simple, surrounded by endless sky. Then she looked at Cole and Eliza. "This is home?" she asked. "This is home," Eliza confirmed.
Okay.
Rose seemed satisfied with this. She ran inside, probably to tell her doll about the adventure. Cole pulled Eliza close, kissed her in the yard with no one watching but the horses. "We're going to make this work," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah," Eliza agreed. "We are." But life had other plans. 3 weeks after the wedding, Cole got word that a cattle drive was forming in the next county. They needed experienced hands, and the pay was good, better than good. Enough to buy breeding stock, repair the barn properly, maybe even add a room to the house for Rose. "How long would you be gone?" Eliza asked when he told her. 2 months, maybe 3. "That's a long time." "I know." Cole looked torn. "But the money would make a real difference. We could expand the operation, hire help, build something bigger than just survival." Eliza understood the temptation. They were scraping by, always one bad season away from disaster. This could change things. But the thought of him being gone for 3 months made her chest tight. "When would you leave?" "A week. They're assembling the herd now, heading out early to beat the worst of the summer heat." "And you want to go?" "I want to provide for my family. This would do that." Eliza nodded slowly. "Then go." "You sure?" "No, but do it anyway." She managed a smile. "We'll be fine here. Rose and me, we'll manage." "Eliza, I mean it. This is important. We need the money. And I'm not so helpless that I can't run a ranch for a few months." Cole pulled her into his arms. "I know you're not helpless, but I don't like leaving you alone, especially with those attacks still happening. What if... Then I'll handle it. I handled worse before I met you." "That's what I'm afraid of." He held her tighter. "Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me if anything feels wrong, you'll take Rose and ride to the Hayes place, to Redemption, anywhere safe." "I promise. Now stop worrying and let me worry about you instead." The week passed too quickly. Cole prepared for the drive, checking gear, shoeing horses, giving Eliza detailed instructions about the ranch that she mostly already knew. The night before he left, they lay in bed holding each other. "I've never done this before," Cole said quietly. "A cattle drive?" "Left someone behind, had someone to come back to." He brushed hair from her face. "It feels different, like I've got more to lose." "You do, but you've also got more to gain. Come here." He kissed her, deep and desperate, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. They made love slowly, carefully, neither of them wanting the night to end. Afterward, Eliza lay with her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I'll miss you," she whispered. "I'll miss you more." "Not possible." "We'll see." In the morning, Cole loaded his gear and said goodbye to Rose, who cried and clung to him until Eliza had to gently pull her away. "Be good for Eliza," Cole told her. "Help with the chores, take care of the chickens." "I will." Rose wiped her eyes. "Come back soon." "Soon as I can, little one." Then it was Eliza's turn. She walked him to where his horse was waiting, determined not to cry. 3 months, she said. 3 months, maybe less if we make good time. "And you'll write if you can?" "Every town that has a post office." "Cole." She grabbed his shirt, pulled him down for one last kiss. "Don't do anything stupid out there." "Define stupid." "Anything that prevents you from coming back to me." "Then no, ma'am, nothing stupid." He touched her face. "I love you, Eliza. Should have said it before, but I'm saying it now. I love you." Eliza felt tears threatening despite her best efforts. "I love you too. Now get out of here before I change my mind about letting you go." Cole mounted his horse, looked back at her and Rose standing in the yard. Then he turned and rode away, disappearing into the morning light. Eliza stood there long after he was gone, Rose's small hand in hers. "He'll come back, right?" Rose asked. "Yes, baby. He'll come back." She had to believe that, because the alternative was unthinkable. The first week without Cole was strange. The ranch felt bigger, emptier, even though nothing had actually changed. Eliza threw herself into work, determined to prove she could manage. She fed the horses, mucked stalls, repaired fence line, hauled water until her arms ached. Rose helped where she could, but mostly she seemed subdued. She asked about Cole every night, counted the days on her fingers. "Only 85 more days," she'd say. Or 84. Or 83. Eliza tried to stay positive, but the loneliness was harder than she'd expected. She'd gotten used to Cole's presence, his quiet competence, the way he'd appear in the doorway at sunset, the sound of his voice reading to Rose before bed. Now there was just silence and work. The second week, the rains came. Not the violent storm they'd had before, but steady, relentless rain that turned everything to mud and made outdoor work nearly impossible. Eliza and Rose stayed inside, baking bread and playing games, and trying not to think about how long 3 months really was. On the 14th day, a letter arrived. Harlan Reed brought it, apologizing for the delay. The rain had washed out roads, made travel difficult. Eliza tore it open the moment he left. The letter was short, written in Cole's careful hand. They'd made it to the assembly point. The herd was bigger than expected, nearly 2,000 head. The work was hard, but the crew was good. He missed them. He thought about them every day. He'd write again when he could. At the bottom, he'd added, "Tell Rose I'm counting days too. Tell her I love her. Tell yourself the same." Eliza read it 3 times, then folded it carefully and put it in the trunk with Sarah's quilt. Something to hold on to. Proof he was out there thinking of them. "What did he say?" Rose asked. "He said he misses us, and he loves us, and he's coming back." "I knew that already." "So did I. But it's nice to hear anyway." The rain finally stopped after 5 days, leaving the world waterlogged and steaming. Eliza ventured out to check the damage. The creek had flooded again, taking out a section of the lower pasture fence. 2 of the chickens had vanished, probably taken by a fox. The roof over the barn was leaking in a new spot. She made a list of repairs, prioritized them, got to work. The fence took 3 days to fix, working in mud that sucked at her boots and made every movement twice as hard. Her hands blistered again, then calloused over. Her back ached constantly. But she fixed it, every board and post, until it was solid. The roof took longer. She'd watched Cole do it before, knew the basics, but doing it alone was different, dangerous. She climbed the ladder with tar and canvas, worked carefully, trying not to think about what would happen if she fell. Rose watched from below, nervous. "Be careful," she called up every few minutes. "I'm being careful." "Carefuler," Eliza laughed despite herself. "That's not a word." "It should be." By the time she finished the roof, the sun was setting and every muscle in her body was screaming. She climbed down slowly, each rung an effort. Rose ran to her when her feet hit the ground. "You did it!" "We did it. You were my lookout." "I was a good lookout. The best." That night, Eliza collapsed into bed exhausted but satisfied. She was doing it, managing, proving to herself and everyone else that she could handle this. But in the dark, with Rose asleep beside her and the bed too big without Cole, the doubts crept in. What if something happened to him out there? What if he got injured, got sick, didn't come back? What if she was doing all this for nothing? She pushed the thoughts away, focused on counting. 68 days left. 67. 66. She could survive 66 days. She'd survived worse. The storm came on day 43. Not rain this time. Wind. The kind that screamed across the open land like something alive and angry, tearing at anything not nailed down. Eliza saw it building all afternoon, dark clouds massing on the horizon, the air going still and heavy in that way that meant trouble. She got Rose inside and started securing everything she could, closed shutters, brought in tools, moved the chickens into the barn. The horses were already spooked, pawing the ground and rolling their eyes. "Is it going to be bad?" Rose asked, watching from the doorway. "Probably, but we've been through bad before." The wind hit just after sunset. One moment it was blustery, the next it was a wall of force that rattled the house on its foundation. Something crashed outside, the rain barrel, maybe, or part of the fence. Eliza couldn't tell and couldn't go look. She lit lamps and tried to keep Rose calm, but the girl was terrified. Every gust made her flinch. Every bang and crash drew a whimper. "Come here," Eliza said, pulling her close. "We're safe inside. The house is strong." "I don't like it." "I know. I don't either." They huddled together while the storm raged. Hours passed. The wind didn't let up, just kept battering the ranch with relentless fury. Around midnight, Eliza heard a different sound, a groan of wood, then a massive crash that shook the whole house. "What was that?" Rose cried. Eliza's stomach dropped. She had a terrible feeling she knew. When dawn finally came and the wind died down to something manageable, Eliza ventured outside. The damage was worse than she'd feared. The rain barrel had indeed broken, half the fence was down, debris was scattered everywhere, and the barn roof, the section she'd just repaired, was torn completely off. Canvas and tar and wood scattered across the yard like broken bones. Eliza stood there staring at it, feeling something crack inside her chest. All that work, all those hours of dangerous labor. Gone in one night. The horses were huddled in the far corner of the barn, terrified but unhurt. That was something. But the exposed roof meant the hay would get ruined if more rain came. The tack room was soaked. Everything was a mess. Rose came up beside her. It broke. Yeah, baby, it broke. Can we fix it? Eliza wanted to say yes, wanted to be strong and capable and prove she could handle anything. But standing there looking at the destruction, exhausted and alone and so tired of fighting, she couldn't make the words come. I don't know, she said honestly. Rose took her hand. Cole will help when he comes back. Cole won't be back for almost 2 months. Then we wait. We can't wait. The horses need shelter. The hay will rot. Then we fix it ourselves. Rose said it like it was obvious. We fixed it before. We can fix it again. Eliza looked down at this small, fierce girl who'd survived horrors that would have broken most adults, who'd lost everything and kept going anyway, who believed that problems could be solved and damage could be repaired because that's what people did. You're right, Eliza said. We can fix it again. It took 6 days. 6 brutal, frustrating, painful days of hauling lumber and climbing ladders and hammering until Eliza's arm shook. She made mistakes, had to redo sections, nearly fell twice. Her hands bled through the bandages, her back screamed, but Rose was there every day, helping where she could, holding tools, fetching water, offering encouragement in her small, serious voice. You're doing good, Eliza. I'm doing terrible. No, you're doing good. On the 6th day, Eliza hammered the last nail into place and climbed down. The roof wasn't perfect. She could see gaps where her work was uneven, places where Cole would have done it better. But it was solid. It would hold. She sat down in the dirt, too tired to stand anymore. Rose sat beside her. We did it. We did it. They sat there together, looking at their imperfect repair job. And Eliza felt something shift. She'd been so focused on surviving, on proving herself, on being strong enough to handle everything alone. But that wasn't the point. The point was showing up, doing the work, fixing what broke and building what mattered, even when it was hard. That night she wrote to Cole. Told him about the storm, the damage, the repair. Told him she missed him so much it felt like a physical ache. Told him that Rose was brave and wonderful, and they were managing, even when it was messy. She sealed the letter and set it aside for Harlan's next visit, then crawled into bed bone-deep exhausted. 39 days left. She could do 39 days. The letter from Cole arrived a week later. His handwriting was rushed, less careful than before. They'd lost cattle in a river crossing. One of the hands had broken his leg. The weather was brutal, alternating between scorching heat and sudden storms. The work was harder than expected, but the pay was still good. He was still coming home. He loved them. At the bottom, almost as an afterthought, 3 more weeks, maybe less. I'm counting every day. Eliza clutched the letter to her chest and let herself cry. Just for a minute, just to release the pressure that had been building. Then she wiped her eyes and got back to work. The next few weeks passed in a blur of routine. Feed the animals, mend the fence, weed the garden, teach Rose her letters, make dinner, collapse into bed, wake up and do it again. Eliza stopped counting days. It made the waiting worse. Instead, she focused on the work in front of her, the immediate needs, the small victories. Rose learned to write her name. The garden started producing tomatoes. One of the hens hatched a clutch of chicks. Small things, but they mattered. Margaret Hayes rode out one afternoon, alone this time. Eliza saw her coming and braced for trouble, but Margaret's expression was different, less judgmental, almost respectful. Miss Warren, Mrs. Bennett, I should say. She dismounted. I heard about the storm damage. Heard you repaired it yourself. I did. Impressive. Margaret looked at the barn, at the house, at Eliza's work-roughened hands. I came to apologize. Eliza blinked. I'm sorry. What? I was wrong about you, about your arrangement here. I thought... She paused, choosing her words carefully. I thought you were taking advantage. using Mr. Bennett for security. But I was wrong. You've built something here, something real.
Why are you telling me this?
Because I was raised to own my mistakes. Margaret's voice was stiff but sincere. And because my daughter has been insufferable since your wedding, mooning over a man who was never interested. I'd rather she focus that energy elsewhere. Despite everything, Eliza almost smiled. I appreciate that. If you need help while your husband is away, let me know. Margaret remounted her horse. We frontier women have to stick together. She rode away before Eliza could respond. Rose came out of the house. Was that the mean lady? Yeah, but maybe a little less mean now. Good. I still don't like her. Fair enough. 2 weeks later, on a bright morning that smelled like dust and sage, Eliza was in the garden when Rose screamed. She dropped her basket and ran, her heart in her throat, expecting injury or danger or worse. But Rose was jumping up and down, pointing at the horizon. Rider! Rider coming! Eliza's breath caught. She shaded her eyes, squinting into the distance. A single rider on a gray mare, moving fast. Cole. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move, just stood there watching him get closer, making sure he was real and not some desperate hallucination. Then he was close enough to see clearly, dusty, tired, but whole. And Eliza ran. She met him as he dismounted, throwing herself into his arms with enough force to stagger him. He caught her, held her tight, and Eliza felt something inside her that had been wound tight for 2 months finally release. You're early, she managed. We made better time than expected. Couldn't stay away. He pulled back to look at her face. You all right? Now I am. Rose crashed into both of them, wrapping her arms around Cole's legs. You came back. Told you I would, didn't I? He picked her up with one arm, kept the other around Eliza. Tell me everything. What happened while I was gone? They walked to the house together, Rose chattering about storms and roof repairs and baby chickens. Cole listened, but his eyes kept finding Eliza's, checking, reassuring, confirming she was real. Inside, Eliza made coffee while Cole cleaned up. When he came back out, he looked more like himself, less like a ghost of exhaustion. The barn roof looks good, he said. It's not perfect. I know it's not. It's perfect. He pulled her close. You kept everything running, by yourself. You know how incredible that is? I had help. Eliza nodded at Rose, who was showing Cole her writing on a slate. Still, you did this, Eliza. Built something, kept it going, proved everyone wrong who said you couldn't. I almost gave up, after the storm. I stood there looking at the damage and thought about taking Rose and riding to town, leaving it all behind. But you didn't. No. Rose reminded me that we could fix it, so we did. Cole kissed her forehead. That's my girl. That night, after Rose was asleep, they lay in bed together. Cole's hand traced patterns on Eliza's arm, relearning familiar territory. I hated being away, he said quietly. Every day felt like a year. But I'm glad I went. Why? Because it proves something. That what we have here isn't dependence, it's choice. You didn't need me to survive. You chose to build this with me anyway. That means more than I can say. Eliza turned to face him. I did need you, though. Not to survive, but to want to. There's a difference. I know. He pulled her closer. Same here. They made love slowly, carefully, relearning each other. Afterward, Eliza lay with her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, feeling whole for the first time in months. How much did you make? She asked. From the drive? Enough, more than enough. We can buy breeding stock, expand the herd, maybe hire help for next season. We could add a room for Rose. Yeah, we could do that. They talked into the night, making plans. Real plans. Building something that would last. The next morning, Cole walked the property, assessing everything Eliza had done. He checked the fence, examined the barn roof, looked over the garden and the animals. When he came back, his expression was impressed. You did good work here. Better than good. I made mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. The point is you fixed them. He paused. I want to show you something. He led her to the barn, to a stall in the back. Inside was a beautiful chestnut mare, young and strong.
Where did she come from? Eliza asked. Bought her with part of my wages. She's yours. Copper's getting old, needs to be retired to light work. This one's trained for ranch work. Fast, smart, good temperament. Eliza ran her hand along the mare's neck. What's her name? Whatever you want it to be. Hope, Eliza said without thinking. Name is Hope. Cole smiled. Good name.
Over the following weeks, they settled back into rhythm. Cole worked with the horses. Eliza managed the household. Rose helped wherever her small hands could be useful. They ate dinner together every night, told stories, made plans. The circuit judge came through redemption in early fall. Cole and Eliza rode to town with Rose and all their paperwork, marriage certificate, property documents, witness statements from Harlan Reed, and even, surprisingly, Margaret Hayes. The judge, a gruff man named Morrison, reviewed everything carefully. You understand what you're asking for? He said to Cole and Eliza. Legal guardianship isn't temporary. It's permanent unless revoked by the court. We understand, Eliza said. And the child? How does she feel about this arrangement? Morrison looked at Rose, who sat between Cole and Eliza, holding both their hands. Do you want to stay with Mr. and Mrs. Bennett? He asked her. Rose nodded vigorously. They're my family. Has anyone mistreated you? No. They take good care of me. Morrison studied them all for a long moment. Then he signed the papers. Guardianship is granted. The child Rose, last name unknown, is hereby placed under the legal guardianship of Cole and Eliza Bennett. Congratulations. Eliza felt tears streaming down her face. Rose looked confused. What does that mean? She asked. It means you're ours, Cole said. Officially. Forever. Rose's face broke into the biggest smile Eliza had ever seen. Forever? Forever. They celebrated that night at the boarding house, buying Rose a peppermint stick and letting her stay up late. When they finally got her to sleep, Cole and Eliza sat by the window, watching the stars. We did it, Eliza said. We actually did it. Built a family out of nothing. Out of loss. Out of pain. Out of two broken people and one scared kid. She leaned against him. And somehow it worked, because we chose it, every day, even when it was hard. They rode home the next morning, the three of them together. When the ranch came into view, Eliza felt something settle in her chest. This was home. Not because it was safe or easy, but because it was theirs. Over the next year, they built on that foundation. Cole bought breeding stock with the money from the cattle drive. The herd grew. They hired a hand named Thomas, a quiet young man who worked hard and asked few questions. They added a room to the house for Rose, with a window that looked east toward the sunrise. Rose thrived. She grew taller, stronger, learned to ride and rope and handle livestock. She still had nightmares sometimes, still flinched at sudden noises. But she laughed more than she cried now, played more than she hid. Margaret Hayes became an unlikely ally, stopping by occasionally with preserves or advice. Her daughter Lucy eventually married a banker from 2 counties over and moved away, much to everyone's relief. The attacks that had plagued the territory stopped. The marshal never found out who was responsible, but the patrols and increased vigilance seemed to work. Or maybe whoever it was just moved on. Either way, people could sleep easier. Eliza learned that survival wasn't the same as living. Survival was putting one foot in front of the other, enduring until the pain stopped. Living was choosing to build something, choosing to love people, choosing to invest in a future that wasn't guaranteed. She'd survived that walk through the desert, but she'd started living the day she decided to stay. 3 years after their wedding, Eliza stood in the garden watching Rose teach a new foal to trust her touch. The girl was 7 now, confident and capable, with Cole's patience and Eliza's stubborn determination. Cole came up behind Eliza, wrapped his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How far we've come, how different everything is from what I planned. Better or worse?" "Different and better." She turned in his arms. "I was supposed to open a dress shop in California. Live a safe, respectable life. Die having never taken a single risk. And instead I found a home in the wilderness, married a man who forgot how to hope until I reminded him, raised a daughter who wasn't born to me but chose me anyway." She kissed him softly. "Built something that matters. No regrets? Only that I didn't find you sooner." Cole smiled, that rare full smile that transformed his whole face. I love you, Eliza Bennett. I love you too. They stood there together, watching Rose work with the foal, watching the sun sink toward the horizon, watching their life unfold exactly as it was meant to. The frontier had tested them, broken them, forced them to rebuild from ashes and pain and loss, but they'd survived. More than survived, they'd conquered it, not by taming the land or defeating their enemies, but by choosing to love despite the risk, by choosing to build despite the uncertainty, by choosing each other every single day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. That night, after Rose was asleep and the ranch was quiet, Eliza and Cole sat on the porch watching stars. You ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't found me that day? Eliza asked. Every day. And I thank whatever force in the universe made sure I was home when you stumbled into my yard half dead and too stubborn to quit. I wasn't stubborn. I was desperate. Same thing sometimes, Eliza laughed. Maybe. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only came from years of knowing someone completely. We should have more children, Cole said suddenly. Eliza looked at him, surprised. You want more children? I want whatever future we can build together. If that includes more kids, yeah, I want that. I'm not sure I even can. I'm not getting younger. Neither am I, but we could try, if you want to. Eliza thought about it, thought about Rose having siblings, thought about filling the house with noise and chaos and love. Yeah, she said, I want to try. 10 months later, Eliza gave birth to a son. They named him James after Cole's father. He came into the world screaming and didn't stop for 6 months. Rose was fascinated by him, insisted on helping with every feeding and diaper change. 2 years after James came a daughter. They named her Sarah, and if Cole cried when he held her for the first time, no one mentioned it. The ranch grew with the family. More buildings, more livestock, more land. Thomas brought his wife and settled in a cabin on the property. They hired another hand, then another. What had started as one man's lonely outpost became a thriving operation. But through it all, the core remained the same, Cole, Eliza, and Rose. The family built from ashes and determination. Rose grew into a formidable young woman, capable and strong, with a talent for training horses that surpassed even Cole's. When she was 16, a young rancher from the next county started calling. Cole didn't like it. No one would ever be good enough for his daughter. But Eliza reminded him that Rose deserved to make her own choices. Rose chose well. She married at 18, stayed in the territory, built her own ranch with her husband, visited often, named her first daughter Eliza. James became a cattleman, taking over most of the herd management as Cole got older. Sarah shocked everyone by becoming a teacher, riding to Redemption 3 days a week to teach children their letters and numbers. And through it all, Cole and Eliza grew old together. Gray hair and wrinkled hands and bodies worn down by decades of hard work, but still together, still choosing each other. On their 20th anniversary, Cole gave Eliza a pocket watch. What's this for? She asked. Open it. Inside was an inscription. For Eliza, who survived the desert and conquered my heart, 20 years and forever to go. She cried, which annoyed her. She'd become soft in her old age. I love you, she said. Even when you're sentimental. I love you too, even when you pretend you're not. They sat on the porch, the same porch they'd sat on 1,000 times before, and watched the sun set over land they'd built together. Do you think we did it right? Eliza asked. This life we made? There's no right way. We did it our way. That's all that matters. But the kids turned out good. The kids turned out great. And we're still here, still standing. Still standing, Cole agreed. Against all odds. Eliza took his hand, weathered and scarred from decades of ranch work. I'm glad I didn't die in that desert. Me too. And I'm glad you found me. Best day of my life. Well, second best. Marrying you was the first. Liar. The day Rose said her first word was your favorite. That was a good day too. They laughed together, old and tired and happy. Behind them, the house glowed with lamplight. Inside, their grandchildren were visiting, filling the space with noise and life. This was what they'd built. Not just a ranch, but a legacy. Not just survival, but triumph. The frontier had tried to break them, had thrown everything it could at two broken people trying to build something from nothing. And they'd won. Not because they were stronger than the land, but because they were stronger together than they ever could have been apart. Because they'd chosen love over fear, chosen risk over safety, chosen to believe that broken things could be mended and broken people could heal. 20 years ago, Eliza had stumbled into Cole's yard more dead than alive, with nothing but desperation and stubborn will keeping her upright. Now she sat on her porch, surrounded by family, filled with love, looking at a life that exceeded every dream she'd ever dared to have. She'd survived the desert, conquered the frontier, built an empire from ashes, but more than that, she'd learned what it meant to truly live, to love without holding back, to build without knowing if it would last, to choose hope even when fear made more sense. That was the real victory. Not the ranch or the children or the years, but the choice, made every single day, to keep going, to keep loving, to keep building. And as the sun set on another day in the wilderness, Eliza Warren Bennett knew with absolute certainty that she wouldn't change a single thing, not the pain, not the loss, not the fear, because all of it had led her here, to this porch, this man, this life. And it was perfect, not because it was easy or safe or what anyone expected, but because it was hers.